Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? So today's episode is Behind the Scenes. So this is a show that we talk about people's current projects and we get to see the projects, what their houses look like, the ones they've renovated. They tell us like what problems they encountered on the project. They will run the numbers with us. So Behind the Scenes is a really fun for those that are learning to do renovations or to do, sorry, my dog, but those that are interested in just learning about different types of projects from like buildings, like regular, let's say flips or luxury flips, whatever it is, whoever I can talk to, or someone's been on to talk about private lending, like how private lend went. So this is basically you get to learn and see what the project is about, live people actually doing it. And so if you're learning, it's really great because even if you want, while they're showing it or while they're talking about the problems they've encountered on the project, you can ask questions and we'll definitely answer it for you. So today's guest is going to be Alex. So let's see, he just came live. I'm just gonna, there you go. He requested it. Just give me a second. Okay, so we are going live with Alex. Here
Hello.
we go. Hey, how are you?
Yeah, no, not too bad, not too bad yourself.
Good, good. Excited to see your project.
I'm excited to finally be able to show it 98% completed. Let's put it that way.
And so what kind of project is this?
Yeah. So this is a duplex conversion, Hamilton, East End, Hamilton, close to Stony Creek. Um, Single family home that basically is now converted to a legal duplex. And the interesting part about this opportunity was the additional detached garage this property had. So it's a irregular lot, triangular shape with 130 some odd feet frontage, and a 500 square foot detached garage, very well built cinder block garage, which I now intend on turning that into a garden suite, so a third unit on the same property.
Nice. And so this project is you're planning to keep the project then, right? This is
Yeah,
not going to be a burr then? You're going for the burr strategy?
let's be honest, I'm an active real estate investor. Anything's for sale, but yes, the intent is
Like initially the plan is to keep it, but if, better opportunities come, I'm sure we're always open to change our minds, right?
I think there was an element of City of Hamilton has only recently in June passed the bylaw, approved the bylaw to allow for garden suites. There was an element of you know uh, pioneering the movement, I guess, being one of the first. At this point, I'm not as excited about that because all the lessons learned on your back, man.
But we all get to reap the benefits of your learning. But before we get into it, let's just tell the viewers, just tell them a little bit about yourself. Like, is this your first time doing like a duplex or adding a suite, or just tell us a little bit about your experience in this kind of project.
Sure, yeah, no, my pleasure. So I guess I've been a real estate investor for the better part of 15 years, but for the most part, being quite a passive strategy, buy and holds with minimal value add, minimal renovations. It was only towards the latter part of 2019 that I started learning about the potential of doing a legal second suite in a single family bungalow in Hamilton. I have a construction background, so it was at that time that I decided to pursue it. And that's kind of when I started becoming a lot more of an active investor. I spent a lot of time looking for this ideal property in Hamilton to do a legal duplex to, because for the most, I knew that I would do most of the work myself. So I would limit myself to what I can do by myself. Now, I've ended up outsourcing the electrical because you have to, and some of the plumbing, but for the most part, that property that I got into in January 2020, I did the legal duplex conversion for the most part all by myself. So it was night and day. I was still working full time. So I knew as soon as I got off work, I'd be at the project on the tools for the better part of almost 6 months. So I completed that. I rented it out, cash flowing $400 or $500 a month. After the refi, I was able to pull out most of my capital. I think I left about $40,000 in the deal. And yeah, I had that happily rented for just about 12 months in total after the renovation. So basically, I guess 18 months in total up until just this past September when I sold it for a very considerable profit in the end. So
Nice.
that was my first legal conversion. Once I've completed that, I realized that I'd only be able to do at best 2 of those a year. So, you know, I really took it a lot more serious to turn it from a weekend warrior into more of a business. You know, seek mentorship as well. So that's ultimately what gave me the confidence to go at this full time. And I started doing flips. I started, you know, changing strategies or trying new things. So between flips or multifamily conversions, we're now working on a fourplex in Chatham. So there's definitely been quite a few other projects since that first one. But that's kind of what started it for me.
Awesome, awesome. So do you want to give us the tour of your place? Let's check it out. Tell us
Sure,
what
sure.
you've done.
I'm going to spin this around. I'm going to start outside. It is dark already, but I do want to do just a brief walkthrough on the outside. You guys can see this. All right. It's gonna be so I'll go outside and then see what I can sort of describe, and we'll go from there. All right. It's the front of the house. So we'll do a more detailed walkthrough on that, but this is the garage. Again, quite dark. It's just a steel awning in front of the garage that is actually quite nice. However, part of the permitting process, I actually have to remove it. They will not allow me to use this as parking spot if I'm actually changing that garage into a legal unit. So I'm just going to move to the back.
And is it a single car garage? It's a single one or a double?
It's a double car. It's a double car garage. So the full double door. So I'm actually just going to walk through the back here. I've turned the lights on in advance. One second. So it's just the interior of the garage. I mean, it is dirty right now. There's still some garbage here and some leftover materials, but you see that it is upwards of 500 square feet. Cinder block built, so very well built structure. This, you know, the previous owner was a car enthusiast, so he actually used this as a shop. So he has a lot of automotive tools here. He had actually, I think he had like a spray booth or something that required an industrial fan like that. So that'll make a nice square window eventually. So the current design work, basically, this would be a bachelor unit. It would be the bathroom right in that corner, laundry and kitchen wrapping around this wall, and then the rest of it would just be wide open. So that furnace will also go. That's commercial or industrial style furnace.
Actually, now that you say that, interesting. How are you going to deal with heating? Are you going to do like electrical baseboards, or are you going to put those wall units in, or?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So I've actually just received some feedback from the HVAC engineers, and I now need to. So my initial plan was to use a ductless split as well as 2 baseboard heaters. This would have covered this amount of square footage that would have provided sufficient heat. Yeah. I now need to also provide an R10 floor insulation. So I actually have to insulate the floor because it is a concrete slab. I have to take that to an R10. So that's just in addition to the heating that I had. So just to give you an idea, that's the kind of the side yard. This is a small deck. I've decided to keep this at this point because I'm probably going to be trenching here in order to be able to bring the hydro into the garage. And I haven't received that permit yet, so I can't do it yet. And then
hydro
the Senate.
and plumbing, you have to bring in both, right? Hydro and plumbing.
Well, then, so that's just it. So that's hydro and water. And then sanitary, it's actually going to be right through here, draining
Yeah.
into the front. So I need to connect it into the front yard.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the reason the front yard is still a mess is that I'm kind of waiting for that approval in order to be able to at least do the sanitary before I do the landscaping on front.
Yeah, yeah, it makes total sense. So how long has it been so far since you've applied for the, like, because you're still waiting for something. So some of the approval has already been completed by now?
I've obtained a permit for the legal duplex, which is now completed.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that was, so I guess I need to go back. I've acquired this property as far back as February. The legal duplex permitting process took, I'm just going to switch this around. The legal duplex permit took upwards of 3 months. Then we got working on this, and I can talk a little bit more on that, what that process looked like. And since it was only in June, I think end of June, that they've actually passed the Bill 108, I think it is, or whatever, the bylaw allowing for the garden suites. It was after that point that I've applied for the garden suite permit, which is what I'm still waiting for.
Okay.
So I had to do them one at a time just so that I can continue with the project. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be doing that garage this year. I may even wait until springtime. So I'm probably going to refinance the duplex on its own, rent it out and refinance it, and then do the garage in the early spring.
Oh, cool. Good idea. And like that, that's nice that at least you have the duplex done so that at least you can start making some money on that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's also, it is, so there's a lot that comes into play. I really like the idea of them approving these garden suites,
Hmm.
but they're still so new that a lot of appraisers may not necessarily give you as high of a value for the garden suite as you would think. You are turning it into a 3-unit dwelling or a 3-unit property, but you might not get that additional X amount on the ARV as you would think, because it's, in their eyes, there's not a lot of comps. It's still kind of a glorified man cave. If you rent it out, if you finish it and you rent it out, and you're generating income out of that too as a legal third unit, it'll help your ratios as far as income, but it may not give you that high value. So you might still be left with a fair bit of money in the project.
Why
So,
do you think that?
pardon me?
Why do you think that? Why do you think it's not going to increase the value?
It does increase the value. Certainly will increase the value long
No, I
term.
mean, sorry, like substantially. Like you feel like it won't be proportional to the amount that you've spent, you're thinking, right? I'm just curious to think like what's your thoughts behind that?
Yeah, no, maybe not so much in the initial appraisal because there's nothing else to compare it to. Appraisers will look at comps. So, they can't quite, like, in reality, if they looked at a triplex based on square footage, I guess that could be a good comp. But in my opinion, that separate garage is more attractive than a third unit in a single dwelling, right? It is
Agreed,
detached.
agreed.
It's
Yeah.
better
Like
built.
I would think if anything, it would value more because it's its own little separate house and you're not really bothering anyone. Like that's for the one thing I would say that is an issue. It's like with duplex or buildings, it's like your neighbors. You can always bother your neighbors. It's like they always say, like the ears, like the walls have ears, right? It's just kind of like everyone hears everyone.
So again, on a sale of this property, especially, and chances are it's going to be an investor, much like what you're suggesting. An investor is going to see the value in it. So I'm fairly confident that I'd be able to turn a good profit if I sold it once I completed the third unit. However, again, a bank's, like, if you're working with one of the 5 banks, they're quite cautious to begin with. They may not give you as high of an ARV as you would think, as you would like, in order to be able to pull out that. So it might end up being a longer term play. It might just be something where you need to be fairly confident that you want to hold on to it for maybe another 2-3 years. And then, so, on my end here, I obviously need to evaluate your personal finances, but I'm looking at refinancing the duplex, trying to get as much equity out of that as possible. And then when I do the third unit, I may not, I may hold off on refinancing it for another year until there's other ones. Um,
Yeah.
the engineer that I'm working with on the permits indicated that my application is only the second in the city. So again, like this whole pioneering thing is not it's not that good.
So let's, before you tell us all the juicy stories about that, do you want to just tell us just show us what's going on, what you did?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So this hope you guys can see it now. So I guess front entrance. So this was a single entrance. It didn't have a side entrance to the basement, a side like external one. So I had to basically separate them right at the front. There's a common area foyer, main door. So both these doors are fire rated doors, separating the two units. Now, this is the living room area that basically right around this cold air return here, there used to be a partition wall going right across and down to here. So there'd be an entryway into the kitchen. That was the initial structure. So part of the renovation included removing this wall in its entirety. This was not a load-bearing wall as far as the truss system in the attic. However, the joists were separated, like we're kind of hanging on this wall. So basically we ended up putting in some serious LVLs to actually take the load and separate it. So it was a little more complicated than initially we thought. Just to actually properly support the ceiling, we ended up strapping the entire ceiling resilient channel so that we can do brand new drywall.
So
now
in your drawings, does that mean that in your drawings there was no structural component, and then it was more once you opened up the walls, you realized you had to add it in?
That is correct. So based on their evaluation, this was not deemed to be a structural wall requiring professional engineering stamps for the LVLs. Once we removed it, we realized that the joist system was spliced, for lack of a better word, at separate areas. So the best way to actually deal with that is still install LVLs, but we didn't need, the engineering stamp for it by code. So past inspections, no problem. At this point, the permit, I believe, is closed on this as a legal duplex. So
that's awesome, and a great point, because obviously that was then an added expense for you guys because you guys didn't think to have to do anything structural, and then the inspector says like, "Hey," I was like, "This wall or the ceiling's probably not going to be able to hold up, right?"
So exactly, and that's something that you're sort of prepared to kind of be exposed to. You don't think it is. The inspector comes in and says it is, then now you have to, you basically go back to an engineer. They evaluate the type of LVL that you're putting in, provide some drawings. Obviously, there's an additional cost to all of that. So, no, that was not required here. Is I guess a bonus. So I mean, as you can tell, brand new kitchen. We decided to go with an island. So actually, I'm going to back up just a step here because I think it's important to mention this part. So I knew that I wanted to do the garage, and now I needed to upgrade the service. So I've gone from 100 amp service. The most I could get here by Electra, by the feeds that they have in this area, was 260 amp. So the split ended up being 100 amp in the basement, 100 amp in the garage, because I knew that I'd want to heat the garage using electricity as opposed to natural gas, as it's more practical to run a new wire than it is to run the natural gas line. So that left me with 60 amps for the upstairs unit. That's why I have a gas stove, right? So again, little things that you need to consider. So I have 3 meters outside. I'd show you guys, but it's really dark right now. So each one feeding one of the units. Right now, the one in the garage is, I'm still paying the service on it, but it's not using anything.
Yeah, but that's a great point, and that's a great solution actually that you just brought up, is that, if just being able to change your stove to gas just to help you out. So great. I think that's like, I just want to re-emphasize because that is a great point and great problem solving.
So most of the times I would always deter investors from putting in gas appliances in a rental unit. They are more dangerous, I suppose. They're higher risk factor. Again, in this case, we had to pick one that needed to have the lesser amperage, and therefore so the other thing would have been to put in a gas-fired dryer. I did not want to have to do that. They're not that easy to deal with. You can't find them, like replacement parts and that kind of thing. So we just decided to go with the, and here's the other thing, that stove is actually the original with the house. It's in great condition, it's been cleaned up, so that made even more sense.
Yeah, definitely looks like it's in good condition.
So in order to be even safer, I decided to go with the over the stove range. Sorry, the vent over the stove. So now we put in for a microwave, instead of doing the built-in, we actually just did a microwave cubby. And it has its own separate circuit, so they can plug their own microwave in there. So I do want to take the opportunity to give a big shout out to John Corradetti. John is an investor himself, but in addition to being a real estate investor, him and his partner are also doing kitchens. They built all of my kitchens and all of my projects, and this is just an example of one of them. I will need to bring him back to build me some boxes over these exposed pipes. So as I said, the project is 99% completed. So John knows that he'll need to come back for that.
But yeah, and, you did a great job for sure.
Yeah, no, I always, and I mean, you know, there's various levels of kitchens. My Toronto project was probably, it is a far more involved, far fancier type of kitchen. But, you know, everything is soft closing drawers, soft closing hinges. It's interesting because I think my wife is watching this and we don't have soft closing drawers at home.
So basically it's going to be like your wife's going to be hint.
She's been hinting for a couple of years now.
She's going to be like, our properties are nicer than our house. This is not allowed.
Yeah. So I'll just do a quick, I mean, this is a 3-bedroom bungalow, so I don't think you're not going to see a whole lot of fancy work here, but normally what I've done in the past, and definitely in my first project, when you have the additional entrance from the main floor to the basement, it's usually an L-shaped staircase. That's because by code you need to block that. That's the perfect spot to insert your washer dryer stacked. I didn't have that here. So this stacked unit, it doesn't look to be as practical as I kind of wanted it to. To be honest, I'm probably going to spin it around 90 degrees and kind of face it in the hallway. And I'm also going to ask John to help me build some gables around it and potentially some shelves on this side. So try to hide some of the piping and that kind of thing. So again, these are just 2 things right now that I still need to do. This is a nice feature that you don't get a lot of these older bungalows in Hamilton, the patio door. So I really like that was original. So we cleaned it up, painted it, but it is in great working condition. And then bathroom. So standard 3-piece bathroom, subway tile, tub.
Yeah, looks great.
And here's the location of the upstairs panel is in one of the bedrooms. It just had to be that way. I mean, the saying does have a saying in that as well. It's just what's practical for the electricians as well. But the fact that it's
you're not allowed to actually have it covered, which is really funny because I guess a lot of older homes, they always would put covers and stuff, or you can't have it like older homes also have the electrical panels, for example, in the closets, and that's like such a hazard, and it's funny because, you know, like those 2 things aren't allowed anymore.
No, you can't put it in the closet, but this is, in my opinion, and I don't know how, well, really probably not supposed to do this either, but you can easily mount the picture over top of that, and, you know, now it's properly neatly hidden. So
yeah, you're not supposed to, but it's true because I remember we also wanted to just put like little doors. You know, like a lot of people put like a little doors on it, and just so you can open. And yeah, they didn't allow. They're just like, no, you're not allowed. It has to have like a meter or something distance of. I mean, obviously to permits, it's fine, but then I'm sure like that people will probably cover it.
Okay, exactly. I can't help what the tenants are going to do. So yeah, this is in a nutshell. I'll go downstairs and show you the basement units as well. But that's being 800 or just over about 850 square feet, you're somewhat restricted on what you can do. 3 bedrooms, so you know that's where it made sense to remove that wall and make it open concept.
Yeah, he looks good. You did a great job.
That still needs to be painted, okay? Everyone that's walked in here is like, you're gonna paint that, right? Yes, yes, yes.
What color are you gonna paint it?
I'm gonna keep it simple and go white. Probably remove the mantle and paint the brick white, and then I have to get, I don't know, I'll have to see what I can do with the gold strips on the on the actual fireplace. But, so this was a nice feature, a really big window down here with a big window well. Try to get as much natural light in here. So I don't know how much you can tell from just from the video, but it really does give it a sense of a main floor unit as opposed to the small, tiny windows at the top. We went quite a bit bigger than what code called for just to give it that additional light. Like if you're going to cut the foundation to put in a window, might as well do a bigger one.
100% agree. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes for some reason people want to like to do the bare minimums, and you're just like really cost wise, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Because like you said, you're putting in a pool anyways. Might as well try to do something where you get, like you said, a lot of extra light.
Yeah. Well, let me do the rest of it and I'll come back over there. So 2 bedrooms down here. Again, the longer shape of the house, plus the fact that I need to have the mechanical room in here. Just you're somewhat limited on the type of space that you can work with. So this is all fire rated. I have, all the water, the plumbing, and the manifolds that still need to be fixed in the wall. But I also have the additional electrical cable here that will eventually feed the garage, so it'll come out through here. And then the 2 bedrooms, decent sized bedrooms with double closets.
Oh, nice.
Yep. It's very good ceiling height here. I have to say it's got to be at least 7.5 feet, if not more.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's I feel like that's the hard part with older homes, getting the good height.
Yeah. Yeah. No, these are, I mean, standard 80-inch doors plus another probably about 10 inches above. So the part that I
It's a
really
2 bedroom unit. Is that right?
2 bedrooms downstairs, correct? Yeah. The part that I like here, this was the original layout. It had the bathroom was in what it is. It really is a cold room. So this was meant to be a cold room, and it had a bathroom. It was quite reversed. It had the bathroom over here where the laundry is. I've decided like we still needed to basically gut this bathroom because it wasn't properly insulated. It was quite cold in here. There was also a fair bit of moisture. So we had this completely gutted and we rejigged it to move the bathtub and be able to actually do a bathtub as opposed to a stand-up shower. You always want to keep a bathtub for potential tenants with kids. I have small kids, so I very much value having a tub. But it also gave us an opportunity to do to spray foam the entire surface, so all the exterior walls as well as the ceiling, and protected that much better, as well as provide HVAC in the bathroom, which didn't have any, and an actual bathroom fan to remove the moisture.
So you're saying that the cold room did have a bathroom, part of it was a bathroom before, and you just changed the layout?
Correct. There was a bathroom in here. So basically the sink was right where this sink is, but that's where the bathroom ended. Toilet, and then this was a shower, a stand-up shower.
Ah, okay.
The terrible part of that design was that the shower included a bench, which they used that bench to hide the cleanouts that you see in the floor right now. You see the two covers there, the old covers. Those are the plumbing cleanouts. So they built a shower over top of these, and they built a bench. So it kind of looked nice because you have a big stand-up shower that was tiled with a bench. But the reason they built that bench is to hide the cleanouts. So you had no access to the cleanouts. And then not to mention the fact that there was a lot of humidity and it was cold. I saw this property in February, so I could tell this was a problem the whole time. So that's why we decided to basically gut it and reorganize it so that it makes sense and you can still have access to the cleanouts. And we managed to stick the laundry in here as well.
Yeah, it's nice. You could at least hide it somewhere this time.
Yeah. So no, but the beauty of it is that it's actually using up that additional square footage in the cold room. It's not taking it up out of the square footage of the basement because you lose in basements. If you have an 800 square foot home, you lose some square footage in the staircase, which is right behind this wall, as well as in the mechanical room. So you end up with a much smaller unit, but by being able to make use of that cold room, then putting the bathroom there, that helped.
Yeah, 100%. And so were the bedrooms already existing in the basement, or did you have to build out the bedrooms?
This was a finished basement with one bedroom. So basically, the one right in front of us was already there. It was interesting because this door used to be like a 32 or a 34-inch door, quite a large door. We decided to make it a narrower door so that we can make this bedroom next to it as well. So
Oh,
we didn't keep much of what was here. It was all drop ceiling, so I had to build it to code, fire rated, sound insulated. So there's very little here that was usable, but we kept that bedroom in its size and then just added the one next to it.
okay.
Yep.
And so would you say was this house like a gut almost? Like I'm talking about now both floors. Was it like a gut and you had to go all the way even like insulation and drywall, or was it a little bit more closer to the cosmetic side?
Really, the only usable, there's been very, very little that was usable from before. If there's anything worth mentioning, it was that the furnace and some of these appliances. So
Oh
it
yeah.
was a gut, but it wasn't, we didn't have to remove drywalls. Like in the bedrooms, you change trim, flooring, and paint.
Mm-hmm.
The windows upstairs were in good condition, so I haven't touched those.
Mm-hmm.
Windows downstairs were also in good condition with the exception of the big one that we had to install. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, for the most part, it was a gut job.
Oh wow, yeah, that's great. So basically, yeah, basically everything was done. That's awesome, and it looks really good. You guys did an awesome job. So let's
Thank you.
get to the juicy part. Let's talk about, you know, what are all the different kinds of problems you encountered, new things that you learned from this job.
Let me pull up my list. No. Um, there were a fair bit of things that were learned here. I had committed to this. So first of all, this was a project that was bought off market. It was not on MLS. It was a joint venture partner of mine that found it, but I'm actually going to give more credit to his wife because she found it, Juan and Andrea, so you know them, and I
Yeah.
think they're on here as well. But yeah, the two of them came across it. It was a Kijiji ad, and I didn't think much of it until he calls me and he sends me the link. He's like, Alex, there's something here. And I realized how big this property is and how big that garage is. I remember even like going by the bank and grabbing some cash. I'm like, I'm not leaving without making a deal here. If I have to pay cash for it,
You're
I'm
like, I'm
committed.
ready.
Yeah. So of course I don't know. I think I was able to negotiate down a little bit from the listing price on Kijiji, but it just made sense. So I bought it for 560. 560. Yes, it was listed at 570. I bought it for 560. But I committed to it as far back as February, really in December, when I didn't have a whole lot of other projects. We closed in February, and again, I didn't have a whole lot on the go. And because it took me about 3 months to get permits done, it took about a month to generate the drawings and apply, and then another 3 months to obtain the permits, I started doing some work. Whether or not I'm supposed to do it, it doesn't matter. I did. So I got it. I brought in a crew for the demo. I demoed the whole place. Then I started ordering materials. I committed to the electrical because if I'm waiting for permits, the electrical can still proceed. That's ESA, and I mean, the electrician that I work with, I'm very confident that he knows what he's doing, so I'm not going to wait. So I committed to the electrician. I committed to the plumber. I committed to the kitchens, even though I would always work with John anyway. But on the premise that I'm probably going to do something very similar to what I did before, most of the work myself, but I'm just going to wait for permits before I can get going on the drywall. And by the time I was able to obtain permits, I had about another 5 projects on the go. So, very quickly you pivot. Uh, you realize that you cannot swing the hammer on all of them. You cannot do all this work by yourself. So I reached out to a few potential contractors, and I ended up working with a contractor that was able to basically step in from the point that I brought it and use the materials that I already had on order. So it was a combination of do it yourself and then get a GC to finish. So I brought in all the lumber, all the drywall, and again, because I committed to the electrical and the plumbing. The contract was on the premise that they worked with my electrician and my plumber, and they project managed them, which worked out well, surprisingly. No, that worked out relatively well. I mean, I told them, you gotta hear from these general contractors instead of me when you need to come in and do certain parts. No problem. So they took it from there, and for the most part, in the beginning, they moved very well. They moved very well throughout the project in the sense of speed, in the sense of quality of work when it comes to compliance with code, from the structural, from anything else that went in. Where it got a little more difficult was on the attention to detail and the finishing touches. It was a combination of being overloaded. I think it's a bit of a trend. It is what it is right now in the industry, being able to get adequate talent, especially on the trim carpentry. So we've experienced some hurdles on that end. The flooring specifically had to be addressed and readdressed and fixed and reinstalled on numerous occasions. It got to a point where
Did you have, let's say, with the flooring? Like, was it like it was lifting or like or damaged or?
It's it's vinyl plank flooring, 7-inch wide, 6 millimeter thick with the padding. It's the same flooring that I've installed on multiple projects in various colors, but whatever. And so on the one hand, if you're not installing it properly, you can easily crack the edges. And if you continue, they will show. They'll poke up and they will, snag your sock, rip a nail, depending how bad it is. The seams, the joints will open up a little bit if not installed properly. But that's either on the installation or lack of floor preparation in advance. So they didn't prep the floor, and especially where this wall was removed, obviously there was a gap there. Generally, you would use some form of plywood to bring it up to level, but also use some mortar, some whatever it is, cement, whatever, self-leveler, whatever it takes to smooth over that bump. It just, it never got done. They tried to fix it, but without fixing the floor properly. I complained because I knew what it had to look like, and it wasn't just not being reasonable, but it was a matter of knowing that it's a high traffic area. It was right in front of this island that I'm standing at right now, where people are going to be putting the stools. So it's going to be a matter of a few weeks before it starts cracking considerably, and you hear it every time you move your chair.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, just naturally, like, you're gonna have tenants. Tenants aren't like homeowners. Like, they don't take care of the house as much as, let's say, homeowners would. So it makes sense that you want to make sure it's done. And even on the contractor side, like, it is so hard to find good workers that I think just everyone is struggling, especially like a lot of us are expanding so much and growing so quickly that it's like, I feel like these kind of problems will happen, right? It's just, you try to hire and they just either like can't listen to their boss, or they're just so new that it's like they're also learning and making mistakes, and it's just, it is, I feel like we're in such complicated times, especially for people like us that are growing so quickly and having to like bulk up our team.
That's exactly it. That's this idea of growth through speed. I appreciate the concept of it, and in many ways I want to do the same thing. That was very attractive to me when I looked at hiring this particular contractor, was the fact that they're implementing some of the very same business principles that I'm trying to implement as far as structure, the project management, grow it, develop systems. I appreciate that. Great. But it can't come at the cost of quality. And that speed of growth is, yeah, it's coming at the cost of quality. Now, so I want to give you another example. I don't know if anybody would appreciate this. So the bathroom caulking, the silicone caulking that normally you put on the joint, like in the corners of a bathtub surround, they installed it the same day. So I'm like, okay, no big deal. I came back the next day and I just touched it and it was still soft. Came back the third day, it's still soft. And I realized that they didn't use silicone. It was no more nails.
Oh, oh my God.
So somebody just decided that they ran out of silicone. They're like, screw it, I'm just going to use this other tube. So, of course, I pointed it out to the project manager. He couldn't believe that actually happened. Yeah, somebody had to come back and scrape these corners clean and apply proper silicone. And it's just a minor thing, but I guess it happens. But that, I see Giancarlo's laughing, so yeah, I'm sure you can appreciate that. The one thing that I will say though is that I will give it to them that they've once this flooring issue was brought up on numerous occasions, they've done numerous attempts to fix it. They owned it and they came back in and ripped up the entire floor and redid both floors. So
and they didn't charge you extra for it, right? You said
that wouldn't have gone very far.
yeah, but that at least shows the integrity in them, and that like that maybe they're going through a growth spurt and they're trying to work with things. Maybe new people coming on. Who knows what issues were happening? But I feel like that just shows the integrity of that company, because there are some contractors that they'll try to make up any excuse to say that it's your fault and that you have to pay it, So I think that's also a good thing to know.
I applaud them for it. So for that I can appreciate. That was both labor and materials at their own cost.
I don't know if you're covering the mic, because I can barely hear you.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
It's on like a.
So I may have been. I think I'm. Can you hear me better now?
A little bit, yeah. I don't know. For some reason, it's changed. You're sounding like echoey or something. But we can work with it. We'll work with it. I was just wondering if you're covering the mic.
I don't think I am anymore. If I was, I think I'm clear now. Sorry about that. There, one second. Is that better?
It's okay. Well, I can hear you at least.
All right. So I think, overall, I appreciate what they've done. The delay itself of not being completed 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't know where to put that. It is what it is at this point. I'm moving forward. Overall, I'm happy with this having been completed. Obviously, I wish you didn't have to go through some of this. I was a little bit surprised on how much, quality control I need to do for somebody that would be a big general contractor. So that's the only thing overall. That's one thing that I can say about them.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, another thing that I'd like to bring up, because I think it's also important that you had to pivot. So I'm sure your budget at the beginning must have been very different, because you were thinking that you would take care of everything yourself, and then you had to go to a contractor. So how big of an impact was it? Like what was your initial like budget, and then what did you end up finishing on it now?
Okay, yeah, no, very, very fair. I have budgeted $120,000 because, okay, while I have done one of these top to bottom all by myself, this time around, my plan was to be heavily involved, but outsource and bring in different trades and project manage the trades. So I was well aware that it was going to cost me quite a bit more than it cost me the first time around. So in perspective, we're going back to 2020, January 2020 to June 2020. It cost me $90,000 out of pocket to bring the project to full completion of the duplex. This time around, I had budgeted $120,000 for me to project manage all of the trades, or 90% of the trades with minimal actual work on my end. So I budgeted 120. By the time I brought the GC in, I'm sitting upwards of $150,000.
Okay, so that actually wasn't too bad. And I guess I misunderstood because I thought you yourself were doing the work, but it's you were just managing it and hiring the trades. So you just found yourself someone to replace you, but not actually like you already had your trades like set up and ready.
So the plan would have been for me to manage it, yes, manage my own sub-trades. The initial one I did by myself. The plan on this one was to project manage the sub-trades. And jump in as needed, but not be the only one on the tools. So again, that was the budget of 120 to project manage the sub-trades. And by giving it away to a general contractor, now keep in mind that I'm still the one that brought in the electrician, the plumber, the kitchen, and most of the materials, like 90% of the materials, the lumber, the drywall, the insulation, the flooring, which is the sore subject.
It's hitting home a little bit.
Well, so it's interesting because flooring is something that I remember doing in high school. Like I actually took out a job doing hardwood, laminate, tile. So I took a fair bit of pride in doing my own flooring, and just watching this floor be installed on numerous occasions and be ripped out and be installed and be ripped out is just like killing me. But I'd like to think that I wasn't being unreasonable, and it was being confirmed by the project managers every time that it's not acceptable. So there you go.
Yeah, I know, and I mean, the flooring needs to be done properly, especially like you said, high traffic areas. Like you can't have the flooring done and then you're gonna have to redo it in a year or two because it wasn't done properly the first time. So yeah, definitely, I think justified.
Yeah.
So were there any other things like learning experiences or problems that you encountered?
Every project will come with its own challenges. Every project will come, I've done things a little bit differently, and it's interesting watching even technology advance a little bit. So as an example, in my first duplex that I completed, by code, you have to do safe and sound insulation between the floor joists, resilient channel, and one single sheet of drywall, 5/8 drywall. This is for fireproofing as well as noise reduction, 5/8 type X drywall. But that's just meeting code. It's not really that high level of noise reduction. So on that project, I installed a second layer of 5/8 drywall with green glue compound in between. Cost-wise, yeah, it doubles the cost of drywall for the ceiling, plus the green glue is not cheap, but the biggest problem is how difficult it is to install the second layer with this green glue nonsense. So it's quite difficult. This time around, I realized that sono panels are actually, maybe they've come down in price, they're a little more available, and they're a better technology. So you still do the insulation, you still do the resilient channel, you install the sono panels first, resilient channel on top of it, and then one single layer of 5/8 drywall. So little things like that will, every time you do one of these, like every year, something else may come up that you can implement. I've decided to put pot lights in throughout the basement. It's in its entirety because I just know that it's that much more practical. Mm-hmm. They've become either cheaper or easier to work with. So from a technical point of view, there's been some changes. There's been some lessons learned. The biggest lesson learned for me is to be able to relinquish control. Like there are still little things that I would have done differently. I probably would have gone through greater lengths to make it look better. But I'm starting to appreciate the value in complete and versus that much better. It's completed. It's faster. It's the key is speed. There is an element of importance in moving faster in these projects as well.
100%. Yeah, just because again, we're running a business, or at least meeting deadlines, I would say. Like if you budget your time frame to be, for example, 5 months, right, and you meet it, then you feel fine, right? Because it's like, okay, I budgeted for that time frame, like the money works for that. But then once you start going over your deadlines, it's just like more labor costs, more utility expenses, more time that there's no tenant there. If it's, for example, a rental unit, so you do start noticing as you run the business that it does actually get very expensive. So, like you said, right, not being so particular about, okay, like, it's done and at least, like it at least has what is needed and you can move forward to, let's say, getting your tenants. Like you start realizing what is important, what is so important and what's not important.
That's right. That's right. I just remembered, I guess I didn't mention this. So the other thing that I didn't like about what they were doing is that they would leave a certain amount of garbage outside. They would come in with a trailer once in a while and empty it, but a lot of it would be left outside, and it didn't look neat. And I kind of told them, I'm like, it just attracts unwanted attention. Well, sure enough, the one weekend, somebody broke into my garage.
Oh no, they were leaving garbage, like not
They
even
were
in bins,
leaving,
like
they
a
were leaving
pile.
materials, debris from construction, there's still whatever, drywall, leftover materials that were meant to be garbage or
Yeah.
leftover flooring.
Yeah.
Uh, they would leave it outside, and I just kind of, like, I wanted to caution them, like, that's, I'm trying not to attract as much attention because clearly there's nobody here in the evenings. So
Yeah.
sure enough,
But they
one
leave
night,
the pile without, like, not in a bin, like they just leave it on the ground.
it was on on the patio here. So they used the patio door and they just dropped it on the patio for them to eventually come back and take it out and throw it in the bin or throw it in their trailer.
Bin, whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely don't want that.
I mean, whoever broke in, they didn't, I'm not blaming the contractor for the guy breaking in, but that was one point. But, the disappointment was, yeah, somebody broke in, they stole a bunch of tools that I left in the garage of my own because initially I intended on using here. Probably stole, I don't know, about $1,200-$1,500 worth of tools. And now, so, as a result, I guess what I've learned from that, or something that you want to consider when you have a lengthier renovation, especially one that you plan on holding, I started looking at cameras. Well, sure, you can install cameras, but I was actually talking to another investor, and they're like, so you catch somebody on camera that's wearing a hoodie and a COVID mask. So you can watch him screw you? Like, what's the point of the camera? So instead, I did the sensor lights. I feel like that might be more of a deterrent. I put 2 sensor lights around the back of the property. Presumably, if they come in and the lights go off, the neighbors are going to, see the lights on. That might deter them from doing anything else, but I'm not sure if I can justify the cameras.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point actually that you bring that up because that is, I think, a very risky thing when you are doing renovations or you're doing renovations of any kind because it is true what you're saying, right? When people are going by, if they see, let's say, tools or things outside of the house and it looks like a big job, like they'll assume this place is probably empty, easy way to just get in and not, like, no one will see them, right? Which is, even with us, same thing with our flip, that was something that I would worry about, and that's why I actually even understood why when they ask you to, like they ask for like you to put cameras and stuff, or if you do, because like you said, like things to deter them from coming, and the chances hopefully being left. But it's like you start understanding why, because it's true. If the house looks empty, because like maybe you have like tons of garbage in front, and they're seeing like there's that much garbage, like who's probably living in there, right? Or like if you're just seeing like piles and piles of material, you know, just like because even with us, we actually had our front window completely blocked, just because we were worried like people like the window was quite big, right? So it's like people look in, you can see all the material laying all over the place, and then you just kind of like the last thing we need is someone one breaking the windows that we just installed, you know, and to get in, and then
Yeah.
two, like God knows how much stuff is inside a house, right, or the garage, right?
They'll break it. So like in my case, I have the permit in the window, so it's pretty easy to tell that. Like not to mention the fact that you can tell it's under construction. So they'll come in for the tools. If they don't find any tools, they're leaving with the copper wiring or something stupid like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the last thing you want to do is have brand new installation of all your electrical and someone comes in and starts hacking it up so they can sell it for whatever per pound.
Yeah, 100%. Or even, you know, another tip that actually someone brought up to me and I didn't even think about was because this is like we actually have also a Hamilton one just starting in a few weeks. And someone was saying that in that area that we're in, they're like, you really have to like mow the lawn and just make sure everything's clean and look clean because they're like there's break-ins that happen and they see like if they see I guess too many weeds the grass is growing like another indication that the house is empty and they'll think to go in which I never thought of you know something like that and so then like in the Hamilton one we have where like it's being maintained just so that people don't
Yeah.
decide they want to break in you know.
Well, and so I've started doing that. I've hired somebody to come in regularly every 2 weeks and cut the lawn here, partially also because I don't want to have to do it. But this is the bad part about taking too long with the renovation. When you start out in the winter, you're not thinking about the lawn. And when you have to cut the lawn on one of these projects that you started in the middle of the winter, you're like, damn it, why is this taking so long? I didn't want to have to cut the grass here.
Yeah. So how long actually, so let's talk about it. So what was your estimate on the renovation time? What were you expecting it to take?
I budgeted, so I have my Excel spreadsheet in my mind right now. I budgeted 9 months knowing that it's going to be a problem. Like this is in the middle of COVID and February started like closing on it in February, knowing that permits are going to take forever. I budgeted 9 months, but in that 9 months, I sort of expected to do the garage as well. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we closed it in February and we're done now. So I suppose it's a little less than that, but I'm not, the garage is nowhere near done. Mm-hmm. Now, it makes sense that now we get to rent it and then we do the garage whenever it makes sense. Whether it's, like if we get the permits now, we might look at doing the plumbing just to get it done before winter. And then decide if we're going to go into the garage and start working right away or we're going to wait until later, whatever makes sense financially. But at least we can have these 2 units rented while we're working in the garage. So
yeah, 100% makes sense. And, yeah, like that, like you said, even at the beginning, right? You got to pivot. Like you work with your circumstances, and you have to pivot and keep on going forward.
Yeah, that was so. I mean, that was a big turning point because this was a considerable renovation. Like I had flips on the go that were a little more lipstick, and then I could justify managing those with sub trades. On the one hand, the scope of work was quite minimal for a general contractor to take on that project and still be profitable. So it made more sense for me to focus on those quicker flips, on those quicker projects and project manage those, and then just give this to someone that can take it from where I left it to completion. Mm-hmm. And then further from that, like taking on other projects, and I ended up getting other general contractors. So right now, I'm doing a combination of managing. We've actually hired an employee in Chatham in our Chatham projects that's working on the various projects in various roles. He's quite competent. So we have that. We're still project managing certain trades, and we still have projects with general contractors. It's a little bit of everything.
That's great. That's awesome, though. I mean, the problems is growing, right? But they're good problems.
Yeah, yeah. Some of them keep you up at night, but
It is, it is. Especially like you said, I think because we're all like growing and learning. The things that we stress about now, I'm sure a year from now, a year or two from now, they won't even be problems to us. Our problems will get just bigger, you know?
yeah, yeah. It's actually really nice to walk through some of these projects, and either the GC or whoever, like one of our own guys at one of the trades, they'll point out a problem and then they'll tell me how they fixed it. Like, that was a problem that I did not think about. Like,
Hmm.
that's phenomenal. I like this. Maybe I would have done it differently, but it's fixed. It's solved.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So, final question. So, what for this kind of project that you did? What do you have one or two tips for reviewers?
Pack patience, man. Pack patience with the city. Yeah, just everything is taking longer. Like this whole COVID, whatever, but like absolutely everything takes longer, and it's just a matter of like being able to communicate the urgency of things to, well, cities, municipalities, or other contractors comes with a level of patience that I wasn't blessed with at times. So, pack patience. I think that's the best tip that I can provide at this point.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I love looking at your place. You guys did an awesome job, and hopefully we get to see some future projects.
Thank you. My pleasure. Yeah, I'll look forward to having this button up and getting it cash flowing. And as soon as we get going on the garden suite, I'll definitely provide some updates on that.
Awesome. Actually, last question that I forgot. What are your expectations of rents for like this 3 bedroom and the 2 bedroom?
Yeah. So I think we're pushing for 2,000 upstairs in the 3 bedroom, 17, 18 downstairs. And that's not inclusive. So all utilities would be extra. Um, it's funny because the garden suite, initially I was thinking about 15 because it's going to be a bachelor, but we just had somebody else walk through it. I might be looking at working with, and he's got some crazy ideas about vaulting the ceilings and making it really pop. And I'm like, man, like, where do you go with this? So how much more is that going to do? So this is the
And
type of guy that I.
that area to be, sorry, the bachelor to be, what do you think that one is going to rent for?
So for a bachelor apartment that's newly done, I can't tell you that there's a lot like this, but we'd be aiming for at least 15.
Okay, cool. It's great to
Yeah,
hear. You'll be definitely making some good money off this property. So
I
like
think
that,
that.
even the problems that you come up with, just telling the viewers, like problems will happen, but as long as you stick through it, like it's always going to be profitable, either through like that you just keep it as a cash flow, or maybe you end up selling it and you gain like a huge profit. And then it's just, I feel like as long as you have that mentality to pivot and change and go with the flow, and you like you said, have the patience and just keep on moving forward and just plow through those problems. I feel like that's what it is, right? You need to have these things to go forward. Don't let a failure make you stop.
Yeah, no, that's yeah. Sometimes I need to remember that it's not per se a failure, but certain difficulties, certain bumps in the roads that can really get to you, and it's important to kind of step back and remember that there's other ways of doing it. There's opportunity to pivot and do something differently. The other thing that I was going to mention about the garden suite, it may be a good opportunity to actually Airbnb it. Uh, Back to the initial point that we were discussing about not being able to get as high of an ARV or the banks to acknowledge the value that you've added. Okay, fine. So I'm going to refinance these on long-term rentals, put more money because I can break even just on these, put a little bit more money in that, get it done, and then just short-term rental that. And then, that may be some additional, well, considerable cash flow. So.
100%. Yeah, totally agree. Thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome to see your project, and hopefully we get to see a lot more of your projects in the future.
Thank you, Diana. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for
Take care.
watching. See you on the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye.